recording. So now we are being recorded. Welcome to this class. Today we have types of discourses. And before I begin, I would like to find out if I'm audible enough. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, that's splendid.
Sir, please tell me I can hear you.
Okay, that's great. So now let's move on. I'll start by sharing my screen so that we dive straight into the business. Types of discourses. The last class we were discussing definitions. So today we are looking at this and we'll start by asking, what is a discourse? Sometimes when we write, we put individual sentences together for different purposes. Now, a collection of sentences is called a passage or a discourse. So the basic thing is that anytime you write a collection of sentences, you can call that a passage. And in critical thinking, we call it a discourse. Now, the issue is to know whether an entire passage or part of a passage is an argument or it is something else. So for that reason, we shall distinguish passages that are arguments and those that are not. So what is an argument? A discourse is called an argument if it contains a claim or conclusion that is supported with reasons or information. So an argument is a passage that contains a claim supported with reasons. Now, an argument contains at least two items, or you can call them components. First of all, there should be a conclusion, which we also call a claim or a decision. And then there also has to be expressions that are aimed at providing support for the conclusion or claim. So there are two basic components of an argument. First of all, there has to be a conclusion. And secondly, there has to be expressions that aim to provide support for the conclusion, to give reasons for the conclusion. Let's say an example. We have three statements here. Statement one, Ghanaian men think women don't deserve to occupy high positions. That's statement one. Statement two, they question the competence and qualification of women who are sent to high office, but refrain from doing so to even incompetent men. Hello? Yeah? Yeah, good afternoon. We have a class now. There's a class on now. Yeah. And then statement three, therefore, Ghanaian men do not respect women. Now, so we have three statements here. The first two statements are, supporting the last statement. Notice that the above passage has three statements. Statement one and two are serving as information, evidence, or reasons to support statement three. Now, for attempting to support statement three, these statements are called premises. And then statement three, which is being supported, is called conclusion. So we have premises supporting conclusion. Now, when you look at how do you identify a conclusion and how do you identify premises? How do you identify expressions or sentences that serve as conclusion? And how do you identify those expressions or sentences that serve as premises? The first style of identification is to look at the structure of the statement or the structure of the expressions. When you look at statement three, you'll see that it is like a summary statement, a statement that is, kind of summing up something that has been discussed already. Ghanaian men do not respect women. That is the nature of conclusions or claims. They are supposed to be the end product of some reasoning process or some deliberations, which has encountered some, some things in the world. But when you look at statements 1 and 2, you'll see that they are statements that provide detailed information on the attitude of Ghanaian men to Ghanaian women. For instance, statement 1 is giving you the information that Ghanaian men don't think women deserve to occupy high positions. And then statement 2 is also telling you that they like interrogating the competence and qualification of women. So these are two pieces of information you are getting from statements 1 and statement 2. And looking at those pieces of information, you look at statement 3. Statement 3 is not a piece of information like the ones in statements 1 and 2. It is like a summation, a summary, or an interpretation of the information you got in statements 1 and 2. So that is how to identify conclusion and also identify premises. But there's an easier way to identify them. And let's look at the next page. Identifying arguments. There are certain words or phrases that you see in a passage, and you know immediately that you are looking at a sentence that is a premise or a sentence that is a conclusion. Now, when you see these kinds of words in this list, then it suggests that you are looking at a premise. When you see a sentence beginning with "for" or "granted that," in view of the fact that, in as much as, since, it's a fact that, then you know that it is a premise. It's a premise because it is providing information. Now look at a sentence that begins with "it is a fact that." When a sentence begins with the phrase "it is a fact that," of course, you know you are looking at a factual statement, a statement of facts, And usually factual statements are used as premises because factual statements provide factual or concrete information which you can use in reaching conclusions. When you see a sentence that begins with the phrase "the reason is that," the reason is that, the reason is that shows you that already it is a sentence that is providing a reason. And you know that the work of premises is to provide reason for conclusions. The reason is that. Now, when you see the reason is that, it is because the conclusion is coming before the premises. So if the conclusion has come before a premise, then the premise can say the reason for this conclusion is that, as shown by the fact that, So these are just a few premise indicators. We call them indicators. What about conclusion indicators? Now you can have other premise indicators apart from this. So this is not exhaustive. Then we can also see a few conclusion indicators. Now these are some conclusion indicators we have. Therefore, we have consequently, hence, asserting that, for this reason, accordingly, and so on. The example we saw of an argument, I remember there was a conclusion indicator in that example. So let's look at the example again. Statement 3, therefore Ghanaian men do not respect women. You see the sentence begins with "therefore." So you can substitute that or you can replace it with any of the other conclusion indicators we just saw. You can replace it with "consequently." You can replace it with "accordingly." Or you can replace it with "for this reason." So let's imagine you are editing this argument and then you say statement 3, for these reasons, Ghanaian men do not respect women. That will help you to see clearly the nature of conclusions and premises. Now let's go to non-arguments. Not every passage or cluster of propositions is an argument. Some passages are non-arguments, including narratives, instructional passages, rhetorical polemic, or opinion. Let's begin with narrative. A narrative is a passage that reports a sequence of events according to the order the events occurred. Example, over the course of 2 weeks, some police officers have been observed stopping and checking cars in the area between Sawam and Anyinam on the Accra-Kumasi road. They extort money and abuse motorists who question their authority. Brandishing AK-47 assault rifles and dressed in heavy police gear, these officers do not just check cars, they also assault some motorists and passengers. So this passage is a collection of factual statements. So there are factual statements showing the progression of events, So that's why it is called a narrative. Narratives are the easiest kind of passages to identify because all you need to do is to see that it's like a story, a collection of factual statements showing the progression of events or showing how an event is unfolding. Then you have instructional passage. Instructional passage is a passage that describes a process or sequence of things to do in a specific order. It offers a list of directives to follow to accomplish some desired effects. So, an instructional passage is like it's a list of directives. The example below offers a list of directives on how to use a fire extinguisher. Example, pull the pin, aim the nozzle at the base of the fire. Aiming at the top of the flame with the extinguisher won't be effective. In a controlled manner, squeeze the trigger and release the agent. Sweep the nozzle from side to side until the fire is put out. Now, this passage is a collection of imperatives. It's a collection of imperatives. So that's what an instructional passage is. A collection of imperatives that show you how something can be done. Then we have rhetorical polemic. A rhetorical polemic is a passage communicating a usually strong feeling and persuasively venting an opinion. Example.
Please, I can't hear.
You can't hear? If others say they can hear, then check your microphone. I hate this lab.
Please, yes.
Yeah, so example, I hate these lab tests. Every time I'm exposed to the disease plants, I fall ill. I'm sure they hate me or they are punishing me or something. It's disgusting how I get sick so often. Now, this passage is a collection of emotive expressions. Yeah, so statement one, I hate these lab tests, is an emotive expression. Statement two, every time I'm exposed to disease plants, I fall ill. That's a claim. It's a claim, not an emotive expression. Statement three, I'm sure they hate me or they are punishing me or something. That's an emotive expression. And then statement four is disgusting how I get sick so often. So that's an emotive expression. So you have a collection of emotive expressions and one claim. What it means is that a rhetorical polemic is a collection of emotive expressions and could include one or more claims. The reason why you have to make a claim in a rhetorical polemic is for people to understand or for people to make sense of what is making you emotionally high. At least you have to make a claim about why you are generating those emotive expressions. So, for instance, in the second statement, every time I'm exposed to the diseased plants, I fall ill. So that's a claim that helps you to make sense of the entire passage. You can see why the person is generating all those emotive expressions. So that is how it is. If, for instance, someone is, complaining about school fees, if you are complaining about tuition fees or your school fees, and you are saying that you don't like the fact that the school fee is expensive, and that you hate, institutions that hike their fees and all those things. If you are saying all those things, nobody knows what you are talking about unless you make a claim to the effect that the school fee is high. So there has to be a claim for people to understand why you are making your emotive expressions. So that's why a rhetorical polemic is usually a collection of emotive expressions that might include claims. In contrast, an argument is a passage that contains a claim supported by reasons. An argument is a passage that contains a claim supported by reasons, but a rhetorical polemic is a passage that contains a collection of emotive expressions and could include a claim. It could include a claim or claims. Okay, so that's the basic difference between the two. Now let's do a few exercises. Name 4 types of discourses. What is an argument? List the components of an argument. Distinguish between argument and rhetorical polemic. So can anyone help us to answer any of these questions? Maybe one person for one question. If you are not ready, then I will quickly answer them and then we go to the next topic right away. Okay, so name 4 types of discourses. First of all, you have argument, then you have narrative, you have instructional passage, and then you have rhetorical polemic. What is an argument? An argument is a passage that contains a conclusion or claim supported with reasons. Question 3, what lists the components of an argument? So the components of an argument are, first of all, a conclusion, and then secondly, premises or expressions that provide reasons for the conclusion or claim. Then question 4, distinguish between argument and rhetorical polemic. So an argument is a conclusion that is supported with reasons, and rhetorical polemic is, a claim that is surrounded by emotive expressions or a collection of emotive expressions that could also include claims. All right, so let's go to the next topic, which is smaller than the one we just did. Verbal and real agreements. Now, the understanding in critical thinking is that majority of the disagreements we have in the world are based upon confusion about the meaning of concepts. Confusion about the meaning of concepts. Majority of the arguments we have in the world arise from lack of understanding or confusion about the meaning of a word or words. For example, Emmanuel Cook, can you mute your mic? Emmanuel. Okay, so I've muted everyone. So like I was saying, verbal disagreements are disagreements that arise from confusion about the meaning of a word or words. For example, let us imagine that two Americans in America or two Russians in Russia were discussing about Africa. And then one of them says, Accra is the capital of Ghana. Oh, sorry. This is, okay. So I was saying that verbal disagreement is disagreement about the meaning of a word or words. Now, and so for an example, let us imagine that two foreigners in a faraway country, Asare Kofi Ransford, why is your microphone on? Now, I wouldn't like anyone to put on his microphone. I'm sure you came into the class with your microphones off. So if I see it on, it means you actually used your hand to put it on. That could incur you a penalty. Okay. So let's assume that two foreigners somewhere in the world were making an argument, and then one of them says, that man is a Fanti. The other man says, no, he is an Akan. Now, this is an argument that shouldn't exist because a Fanti is an Akan. So the argument is existing because the second person doesn't know that a Fanti is an Akan. If the second person knows the full meaning of being a Fanti, which includes that Fantis are Akans, then the argument would not emerge. So the argument is existing because of some confusion or lack of education about the meaning of being a Fanti. So that's why we call it a verbal disagreement. The second example, she's a Christian because she receives Holy Communion. No, she's not a Christian because she does not speak in tongues. Now, this argument is arising because there is some confusion about what it means to be a Christian. So what really is the meaning of being a Christian? So technically, you have to call it a verbal disagreement because the disagreement is feeding on the confusion about the meaning of being a Christian. By contrast, we have what we call the real disagreements, the real disagreements. Real disagreements are also called substantive disagreements. They are disagreements about facts and values. So any disagreement about facts or values is a real or substantive disagreement. Now let's imagine that two foreigners somewhere in the world, maybe Russians in Russia, were discussing Africa. One of them says that Accra is the capital of Ghana. The other person says no, Kumasi is the capital of Ghana. Now they can sort that confusion by verifying what is the city, capital of Ghana. So, you resolve this matter through verification. Then apart from disagreement about facts, which is example 1, we have disagreements about values, which is example 2. For instance, let's assume in 1950, Kwame Nkrumah and some other members of the Big Six were negotiating with the British for the independence of Ghana. And then in that discussion, someone says they are trying to find a town that can become the capital of the country. And someone says Accra should be the capital of Ghana. And another person says, no, Accra should not be the capital of Ghana. What is the disagreement about? It is a disagreement about values and preferences. Preferences are also values because you prefer something you value over something you don't value. Whatever you prefer has more value for you compared to what you don't prefer. So values, preferences, they are the same. Now, an interest. So Accra should be the capital of Ghana. No, Accra should not be the capital of Ghana. So it's a value difference, you know. So a little exercise. Determine whether the following disagreement is verbal or real. Sandra says, that man is quite old. He died at 50. And then Comfort says, you call that old? He died young. So is this a verbal or a real disagreement? If anyone wants to answer, the person can raise her hand and I'll tell the person to go ahead. Meanwhile, let me stop sharing so that I can correct something I see in the verbal. Okay. Now
I think verbal.
I'm coming. I'm just trying to. Okay. So now let me look at those who are answering. Who was the first person to answer? You have Judith Brown. Now, so let's begin with Judith Brown. Judith, what's your answer?
Sir, please, I think it's verbal. Verbal dispute.
Yeah. Your reason?
Because old here, they are disagreeing on a word.
Okay.
Because someone thinks 50 is old and the other thinks 50 is young.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. And then what about Emanuela Otabio? Emanuela Otabio.
Yes, sir.
Please. Hello, sir.
Emmanuel Kofi, you have to mute your mic because Emanuela Otabio is speaking.
Sir, please, is verbal dispute.
Your reason?
Because they are disagreeing between old and young.
Yeah, but it's not just a disagreement between old and young. Is it more like a disagreement about old, being old?
Yes.
Okay, so Emmanuel Kofi.
Sir, I think it's verbal.
Your reason?
Yeah, because they are, or they lack the meaning of the age 50 being old or young.
Okay, that's fine. You can stop there. So let me just make a few comments and then we are done with that. So fine. When you look at the word old, you see the meaning of the word old. We know that old is to have come a long way, to have lived long, and then to be getting tired, you know. So those 3 or 4 things, to have come a long way, to have lived long, to be getting tired, and you know, to be resting more, to be getting weaker. So now I've counted 5 factors. But the problem is that those 5 factors apply at different ages in different countries. There are some countries where people can live up to 150 years, 120 years, such as Puerto Rico. You know, when you go to Puerto Rico, many of their elders are up to 120 years. Some are even getting to 140, 150. And then, you know, scientists are still trying to find out why they are living that long. Although scientists have discovered that they eat a lot of potatoes, a certain kind of potato. The same thing with those living on a particular island of Japan, I think Okinawa, I can't remember the name of the island. They also live that long and they also eat a lot of potatoes. So scientists are trying to find out why people who eat a lot of potatoes are living more than 100 years. But that is not our point of discussion. The fact of the matter is that when you get people in a society where people live up to 150 years, people will still be young by 90 years. But in a society where people die mostly around 70 years, 60, 70 years, 80 years, people will be getting old by 45 years. So if you see old people of 45 years in countries where there is a short life expectancy, and then you see old people of 90 years who probably look stronger than the 45 years people of the other society, then it becomes difficult to determine when someone is old, So because the meaning of old, or because the whole meaning of old has not yet been settled, you can call it a verbal disagreement. So that's how you determine verbal disagreements. Okay, so now I think that's all we have for this class. I'll send you a link. I'll modify the link I sent you before so that link will be showing you 2 classes instead of 1 per week. So today is Saturday. I'll send you a link from next week. You'll be holding classes on Thursdays and Saturdays by the same time, which is by this time. So that's it for our class today. Do we have any questions? Anyone who wants to ask something? Robert?
Sir,
Yes.
hello.
Go ahead.
Please come again to the Thursday class. We were saying something like we're having 2 sessions about living.
Your line is breaking. Some of your words are not come across, but I was saying that we'll be having 2 classes per week. Those who have their classes on Fridays will start having another class on Wednesdays, and those who have classes on Saturdays will start having another class on Thursdays. And
please, are we not having face-to-face class till we write the exams?
Okay, thank you.
No, face-to-face classes for some courses, but not for some other courses.
Okay.
There are some courses where you can have face-to-face classes.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, so, all right, so I will...
Hello, sir.
Jeffrey.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Robert.
Yeah, so please, the aspect where we're talking about the verbal dispute, you made mention that, and in this case, one person is right. So among the 2 individuals, with the example you give, the man is a Fante, no, he's an Akan. Are there instances where both parties can be wrong?
Yeah, the exercise we just did, both of them, none of them can really be correct because you can't say which particular age is old. You can only call someone old when you can see that he looks it. When you see someone really looks old, then you can say it's old. But if someone is looking old at 40, you have to admit that he's old, he's looking old. Or if someone is still looking young at 80, it's fine. So because of that, you can't say which of the parties in our exercise was correct. So, and it is not a topic It is not a topic. There are topics where you cannot easily determine right or wrong. Yeah, so if the meaning of a concept has not been settled, then you can say it's a verbal disagreement, and it might continue to remain a verbal confusion. There are some where someone is right. The person who says a fante is an arcan is right. The person who says a fante is not an arcan is wrong. So it depends on what the topic is.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
All right. So I wish you all a pleasant weekend. Those who did not attend the class should go and watch the videos. I'm posting it right now to your Sakai group. You go to the resources section and you'll find it there. So have a nice day.
Have a nice day too, sir.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Emmanuel,
Thank you, sir.
bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye, 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 bye.